We continue now at the top of Daf Tesam at Aleph in Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 9a. The Mishnah says, Hareini Nazir min ha-grogros u min ha-devela. Let's say a person says, I am a Nazir, and I'm going to refrain from grogros, from dried figs, and from devela, from cakes of dried figs. Beis Shammai omrim Nazir, u Beis Hillel omrim eino Nazir. Beis Shammai say in such a situation, the individual is a Nazir, and Beis Hillel say the individual is not a Nazir. The idea over here is that really a Nazir is somebody who refrains from wine products, from grape products, and here he's saying he's a Nazir from grogros and devela, which is not a typical Nazir, and Beis Shammai say nevertheless he is a Nazir, and Beis Hillel say he is not a Nazir. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Av kisha amru Beis Shammai, even when Beis Shammai said that, lo amru ella ba'omer harehein alai karbon. All that Beis Shammai really said is talking about a situation where the person says what he meant was, he's making it like a carbon, he's making it prohibited to himself. And Rashi over here says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda af Beis Shammai lo amru, sheyiyo bo shum naziris klal. In other words, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Beis Shammai never said what we're saying Beis Shammai said. Beis Shammai didn't say he's a Nazir. No, on the contrary, according to Beis Shammai, he is not a Nazir. El lefi masha amru shechoshen ledevarav. What they said was as follows: we're concerned and we take his words seriously. Bizman she'omer hareini Nazir min ha-grogros min ha-devela v'hareihen alai carbon, where he says, I'm a Nazir from grogros and devela, and they are upon me as a carbon. Kilomer sha'asurna olav kekarbon she'yeh nadir milechol mehen, meaning to say that he's making a neder from those items, from the grogros and from the devela, that we take seriously. Avol mishum naziros ein choshen bo kol ikar, but in terms of the naziros, that we are not concerned about at all. And the Gemara says, Hareini Nazir min ha-grogros min ha-devela. Again, the Mishnah said, if the person says, I'm a Nazir from grogros and devela, from dried figs and from cakes of dried figs, Beis Shammai omrim Nazir. So the Mishnah said that Beis Shammai say the individual is a Nazir. And so the Gemara asks, V'amai, why should this be true? Why should it be a Nazir? Mikol asher yasim yigefen hayayin amar Achmana. The pasuk says that a Nazir means he's staying away from grape products, from wine products. It does not mean grogros and devela. Why should he be a Nazir? And to that the Gemara answers, Beis Shammai savri lo Rabbi Meir. Beis Shammai, they hold like Rabbi Meir, the Amar ein adam motzi devarav levat halav. Rabbi Meir holds that in general, a person doesn't say something for no reason whatsoever. Rabbi Meir's statement is relevant to Erchin, but the point over here is, if the individual said Hareini Nazir, so we have to take those words seriously. It's not levat halav, it's not for nothing, and therefore the person is a Nazir. Beis Hillel savri like Rabbi Yossi, and Beis Hillel they hold like Rabbi Yossi. The Amar bigmar devarav adam nitzvas. Rabbi Yossi says that we do take seriously the end, the concluding words. When a person says something at the end of his statement, we take that seriously, and therefore when the person says min ha-grogros min ha-devela, after he says Hareini Nazir, we take the phrase min ha-grogros min ha-devela seriously, and therefore we assume that what he's saying really is he's not a Nazir, because a Nazir has to do migefen hayayin, that has to do again with grape or wine products. It doesn't have to do with grogros and devela, and therefore he is nullifying essentially that which he said at the beginning of the statement, and that's what the Gemara says, v'hayin neder u'pischo imahu. What this really is he's making the neder, but then right away there's an opening to get out of the neder. He says Hareini Nazir, but then he gets out of it immediately by saying min ha-grogros or min ha-devela. But the Gemara continues, Beis Shammai nami neder u'pischo imahu. But according to Beis Shammai also, why don't we say the same thing? The first part of his statement we take seriously, but we should also take the second part of the statement seriously and say that it's a neder together with a Pesach, and there's an opening here, and we undo that neder. And so the Gemara explains, Ella Beis Shammai savri like Rabbi Meir. Rather, Beis Shammai, they hold like Rabbi Meir. Like we said above, Rabbi Meir holds that a person doesn't say something for no reason whatsoever. And when he says that the phrase Hareini Nazir, that makes him a Nazir. And Kiko Amar min ha-grogros min ha-devela, in Beis Shammai's view, when he adds on the words min ha-grogros and min ha-devela, we understand that to mean that he's coming to ask, he's asking the halachic authority to undo that neder. Beis Shammai l'taimayu, and Beis Shammai in our Mishnah, they follow their opinion. The Amri, because Beis Shammai, they say, ein she'ela behektish. There's no such thing as she'ela. Let's say a person consecrates something to hektish. You can't do she'ela, you can't ask to undo it. V'kevan de'in she'ela behektish, ein she'ela b'nazirus. And since there's no she'ela behektish, there's also no she'ela when it comes to nazirus. You're not able to undo it by asking in that case as well. And so, therefore, that's why Beis Shammai say, this she'ela over here, when you say min ha-grogros min ha-devela, does not work, and the person is a Nazir. Beis Hillel savri, and Beis Hillel, they hold ki Rabbi Shimon, they hold like Rabbi Shimon. Titanan, as we learned in a Mishnah of Rabbi Shimon Poter, Rabbi Shimon says Poter. Rabbi Shimon over here is talking about a person says he's going to bring a carbon mincha, which is usually brought from wheat, but he says he's going to bring the carbon mincha from barley. So Rabbi Shimon says he's totally exempt. He doesn't have to bring the carbon. Shelo hisnadev kiderech hamisnadvim, because he hasn't offered this carbon in the normal fashion, and that's the same thing over here when the person says Hareini Nazir, but then he says min hagrogros or min hadevela, so he adds on these words that really have no meaning. It's not kiderech hamisnadvim, so he's completely potter, and he's not a Nazir, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tes Amud Beis.